Hi, my name's Kim and I work for the Early Years Alliance. Today I'm going to be talking to you about listening and attention skills. I'll be talking about what they are, why they are important, how they develop, and how you can support your child at home. So, what are listening and attention skills? Well, listening and attention is all about the ability to focus in on and absorb information from our surroundings. You need to be able to zone in on the information that you need to take in, whether that be on a task that you're doing, or it might be the sounds or speech that you're hearing. Why are they important? Well, first of all, listening and attention skills help to develop social skills. Being able to listen to your friends and focus on what you are doing helps you to develop your relationships with them, helps you to participate in play and games that are going on. It also helps to understand language. If you're able to listen and focus on what's being said, you're more likely to start to understand what you are hearing. And the same goes for following instructions, being able to listen and focus in on what's being asked of you and processing that so that you can follow the instructions you've been given. Learning to communicate goes hand in hand with listening and attention skills. Learning how to stop and look and hear what's being said, as well as focusing on that person talking to you, is really important. From all of that, you're going to start to learn about the speech sounds that you hear and see being made by the person that you're talking to. It helps your child to develop their way of talking. It's also really important for learning. You need to be able to look and listen and focus on what's being said and what you are learning to be able to absorb that information and take it all in. So listening and attention skills really underpin quite a lot of what we do and are really, really important. So how does it develop? As soon as babies are born, they enter this world that is full of sounds and interesting things happening in their environment all around them. Everything is new and novel. They'll begin, when they start to hear those sounds, to turn towards them. They might sometimes pause or even startle when they hear a sound like a dog barking or the doorbell going. They'll begin to look at the person speaking and they will start to respond to the sounds and the speech that they hear by maybe looking, smiling, and moving at that person speaking to them. Their attention is very fleeting and they do flip between one activity to another, especially when they're incredibly young. As they get a bit older, they'll begin to enjoy more of those sounds around them and might even start to move their whole bodies to some rhythms and strong beats that they hear as you're singing rhymes and songs to them. Their attention increases a little bit, not massively, but it does begin to increase, and they'll be able to remain on a task that they choose for a little bit longer. They're still going to be really easily distracted by noises at that point. But as they get a bit older, 18 months, 2 years old, they start to recognise and join in with some of those familiar songs and rhymes that you've been singing to them since they were born. They'll start to join in with some actions and some sounds that they're familiar with, and their attention becomes a lot more focused on what they are doing, particularly when it's an activity of their own choosing. In fact, you might even find their attention becomes quite rigid and it's almost quite difficult to gain their attention. It seems they're not even hearing what you're saying. As they mature, they'll grow a bit more interested in the sounds and the noises that you make as you're reading stories to them. They'll recognise and respond to familiar sounds, such as a knock at the door. They might then turn to look at the door and go to see who it is. Their attention remains quite focused on what they are doing, but it becomes a little bit easier as they get older to gain their attention, especially if you try to gain their attention by saying their name. As they get a bit older, ages 3 and 4, they are able to focus on and listen and respond better to one-to-one conversations and small group conversations when it's about something that really interests them. They are more interested and able to focus on stories as you read to them. And they'll be able to join in with some of those repeated words and phrases in stories and rhymes that they are used to hearing. They'll be able to listen or do, but they're starting to be able to change between listening and doing a lot more independently. By the time they reach school age, they are able to focus for a lot longer, and it will be on activities of their choosing, but sometimes activities that the teacher is giving to them. And they will be able to listen and do at the same time for a short period of time as well. So you can see how listening and attention skills develop from being so very young up until they get to school and older. So how can you help to support those really important listening and attention skills at home? First of all, a really important point to make is talking about the noises in your home. If you have your radio on or your TV on, it can be quite distracting, that background noise, and it takes away from the attention and the conversation that you may be having with your child, or the other sounds that they need to be hearing and responding to and understanding in their environment. So try to keep background noise to a minimum where you can. Look at your child when you're speaking. It's really difficult if you're in the middle of folding the clothes and your child comes over to have a little chat. It's a bit difficult because you're in the middle of something, but it's really important that you take the time to stop and to turn to look at them and to be physically close to them so that they know you're listening, and you're also role modeling what good listening looks like. So being physically close and using eye contact are really good signals to children that you are ready to listen, and it shows them that that's what they also need to do when they are listening, helping to develop their listening and attention skills. It's also really good to vary the tone and intonation of your voice when you're talking to them, because children love to hear different sounds, and it makes it a lot more interesting to them as well. So for example, if you have a book, and I'm sure you'll be familiar with this story, lots of children love this book because there's lots of repeated phrases in there that they can learn themselves. But it's much better if you read it with interest. So instead of saying, I wrote to the zoo to send me a pet, you might say it like this: I wrote to the zoo to send me a pet. They sent me a... And here's the anticipation, and your child will be looking and listening and waiting. Elephant! He was too big. I sent him back. It's a lot more interesting when you vary the intonation and tone of your voice, and it creates the anticipation, keeps them focused, and teaches them how to vary their own intonation and tone as they're speaking as well. Listening to the sounds around them is really important, and a great activity you can do is a sound walk. You could walk around your home listening for different sounds. You can be out walking to the shops, you can be walking to the park, you can be outside in your garden. And listening to the sounds around you helps them to become familiar with their surroundings as well. So they'll start to listen carefully to the wind blowing through the leaves, the birds chirping, next door's dog barking really loudly, dad's car driving onto the driveway. And all of those sounds help them to develop their listening skills and to focus their attention on what they're hearing around them. They can then use those sounds in their own play. So they've heard daddy's car and it's really, really loud, that engine. So when they have their toy car, they're going brrrr and imitating the sounds that they've heard themselves. Other activities that you can do are turn-taking games. That helps your child to develop their focus and their attention, and also to begin to learn turn-taking, a bit like in conversations. One person speaks, the other person listens, and then you swap over. Peekaboo is a really good game for this, and babies and older children love this alike. Babies really love having your face disappear and reappearing. Peekaboo. Peekaboo. Again, it's the anticipation. So they're really focused on what you're doing, waiting to see you reappear, and they're hearing the words peekaboo. When you start saying it, they'll start recognize you're going to hide now, you're going to play that game. And they'll know to take it in turns, when it's their turn to join in, when it's their turn to listen. So those games are really good for developing listening and attention skills. It's important when we're thinking about listening and attention that we give your child time to listen and hear what's being said. So give that time to process and comprehend what's going on. Also, as I mentioned before, try to say their name before giving them instructions, just to make sure you've gained their attention and that they're used to stopping and listening when their attention is being gained. You can motivate them to focus on activities as well by giving them activities that really interest them. If your child's really interested in cars, then an activity involving toy cars would be really good. If they like looking after babies and pretending to be mummy, then giving them dolls to play with and lots of different props to go with that will also help to motivate them to focus and practice staying on task for longer periods of time. Sharing favourite stories, songs and rhymes is going to help them to focus and also develop their listening skills. They'll start to recognise those rhymes you're saying and anticipate what's going to come next and start joining in themselves. Playing listening and attention games are always really fun too, and you can play these with children who are a little bit older. Even adults might still enjoy playing a little bit of Simon Says. Again, that encourages your child to focus on what's being said, listen carefully, but also paying attention and making sure that they are knowing what the instruction is so they get it right and they're not out. Keep games short, as I mentioned, because their focus and attention will only last for so long, even if it is on an activity they're really interested in. And trying to push it beyond the point of their focus and attention can then be a bit demotivating. So try to make sure that you keep your tasks and games short and applicable to how long your child can concentrate for. Also, as your child gets a bit older, it's really important to reinforce the message of why good listening is important. And that might be so they can hear the instructions in a game. It might be so they can hear the traffic on the road and they know if it's safe to cross the road. It might also be that they need to be able to listen carefully when they're at school or at nursery so they can learn new things. There's lots of ways that I've mentioned about how you can support your child at home. Remember, you are your child's first educator. You are the person who can help them to develop and grow first and foremost. And the fact that you're watching this video and trying to find out ways to support your child is a really good start. Also remember that all children develop at different rates. So although I've mentioned some ages, if your child is not reaching those different stages, don't worry because we all develop at different rates. If you want to find out a little bit more about how you can support your child at home, ideas for activities and support, you can visit the other videos on our YouTube channel, or you can visit us at familycorner.co.uk for other ideas. Thanks for taking the time to watch us today and have fun. Goodbye.